Welcome everybody to the Streakers Island podcast, and I am using a Christmas mug for my coffee at 1:40ish in the morning because it's the most wonderful time of the Tuesday. It's the Streakers Island podcast. It is I, Jacob Moore, the self-proclaimed sports analyst, who still has not got a haircut, but I did get a comb. So we are joined by the most dashing man you will ever see. Even if you're blind, you know how dashing this man is. It's your boy, Lane Dashing Dashko. Then we have Mr. Moore for your money. Woo! That was just pathetic. Woo! And then we have Chazzy 5.36. The updates are coming, ladies and gentlemen.
It's all that exhaust yesterday, more for.
That's why. Woo! Make sure you stay locked in on our stories. We're going to have some behind-the-scenes footage of some awesome Streaker 1v1 promos coming out. But we got an action-packed show for you today. We're going to go over the Oilers versus Panthers. Not in a crazy detail, because we will have a pregame show. You know there's no party like a Streakers Island podcast live show party. We're also going to talk about the Leafs, quote-unquote, DNA. Again, we did this as a live show, so make sure you find the full live show on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. But we're going to still dive into a little bit in that. Chazzy is out of popcorn, but that is A-okay. The Blue Jays are starting to get on a roll. Dan thinks 98 wins. I think he's been hanging out downtown too often with some unsettling people and has tried to do substance. The CFL had some surprising cuts heading into week 1 in the season. We're going to dive into that.
Yeah, what the?
Lane has some big news in the NHL. Lane and Chazzy are going to dive into the NBA Finals while Dan hopefully stays awake, and so much more. But I think right off the hop here, it's time to get into this Oilers versus Panthers. So when you look at a team, I think there's 3 major areas you look at. Your goaltending, your forwards, and your defense. So I'd like to go around the room or the virtual room, our virtual party, whatever the heck you want to call it. And I want to start off with goaltending. The obvious answer is to say Florida has the advantage in net.
The
non-obvious answer is to say Stuart Skinner has as many shutouts as Bobrovsky in less games and a better goals against average. So you can shake your head all you want, Dan. Stats don't lie. People do. That's what you crazy people always tell me. So who actually has the advantage in net? I'm going to say it's Florida still. Yeah. However, it'll be interesting if my answer stays the same after game 1 or game 2. Dan, you think I'm crazy to even consider that Stuart Skinner could potentially outplay Bobrovsky? He did just outplay Jake Ottinger.
Okay, but come on, bro. I mean, how many cups of Jake Ottinger won? 0. Okay? How many cups of Bobrovsky won? 1. But that's not the point. The point is Bobrovsky has played very well in Stanley Cup finals in the past. He's a $10 million goalie for 10 million reasons. He is the best goalie in the NHL in the Stanley Cup final, do or die. And Stuart Skinner, this is a nice little cute hot streak, okay? He still has a bad game in him, and old Skinner will come back soon. So I think Jacobs is making really good TV.
Yeah, but you look statistically, these guys aren't that far off.
Statistically, my butt.
Bobrovsky's got a .912 save percentage. Skinner's got a .904. Bobrovsky's got a .211 goals against average. Skinner's got a 2.53. They both have 3 shutouts.
Okay.
Statistically, it's a toss-up. Now, I think I would still agree that Bobrovsky's the better netminder. But, Lane, do you kind of get where I'm going with this?
Yeah, you know what? I'm actually going to take the Edmonton Oilers on this. Not because, well, hear me out. Not only for the starting position, I think it's pretty even. But let's just say, you never know if you have to get into your backup position. We forget that Florida now has not played their backup a single game in the playoffs yet. It's been all on the shoulders of Sergei Bobrovsky. And you got to remember Calvin Pickard, who is 6-0 in the playoffs right now, even in this year, if he has to come in for some unfortunate reason, whether Sam Bennett wants to take a dirty shot at Stuart Skinner, the Oilers have some experience in the backup, and he's been playing extremely well. So I look at them being not only up kind of balanced on the starting position, but I think the backup the Oilers actually have a scare statistical advantage, having Pickard over Vincent Vanacek, who hasn't even seen the net at all this year in the postseason.
I think that's an interesting way to look at it here, not just comparing the starting goalies, but the what if.
Yeah.
And what if I am much more confident putting Calvin Pickard in at random than I am putting in Vincent Vanacek. Just because it's the pure point, as Lane, you pointed out, Pickard has played 6 games. He went 6-0, 2.84 goals against average. The .888 save percentage isn't great, but at the end of the day, he was able to make one more big save than his opponent every night he played. So, Lane, I want to ask you, Chazzy, I want to ask you. I've already asked Lane. I'm just so memorized by how dashing Lane is. All I want to think about is Lane. It's like if I have the notebook with the hearts, it's Lane dashing Dashco. But Chazzy 5.36.
Should put some sparkles on him.
That's right, some glitter.
Glitter.
Do you think Dan is right to say Florida has the blown out advantage, or can you see where Mr. Dashing and I are coming from?
Oh, I see.
Oops. Say that again. I've actually cut you off.
I see both your points. So we're on a teeter-totter. It's like this right now. Because let's face it, this was a matchup 360 days ago, and motivation is going to be king here. We have playoff Bob, who's the king of the castle right now. Stuart Skinner's going to try and knock him off, but I think motivation is going to come down. You're going to see the best that these guys have with these two offensive teams. Mind you, I think Edmonton leans more on the offense than Florida, but Florida will grind you down and continuously score when they can. So I think you both are right, and we'll see who comes out, but a lot of motivation on both sides.
That was the most politically correct answer I think I've ever heard on the Streakers Island podcast.
But he has a point that there's momentum on both sides. Like, they both have something to prove.
What does Florida have to prove? This is their
They're
third
the Stanley Cup champions.
Cup finals. However,
Florida wants to be a dynasty at this point. We're not content with just.
You brought Marchand in for this.
Yeah, we're not content with just winning one cup. And everyone keeps questioning Bobrovsky. Oh, is he too old? Blah, blah, blah. I'm with Chazzy. I think Bobrovsky's got some things to prove. I think for whatever reason, people don't put Bobrovsky in that franchise category goaltender. You just said yourself, Jacob, the league doesn't have guys like Cujo and Bordeaux and Patrick Roy anymore, and Bobrovsky wants to change that. He's like, no, I'm one of those guys. And give him a few more cups, he might very well be in that conversation.
See, my heart's with Edmonton in this series, but if it was any other team, I'd be going for Florida.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too.
But now here's where it gets interesting. We talked about the goaltending, and we all bring up some interesting points. Offensively, this is where I think Florida could run into a problem. And I think if Florida has a shot in this series, which they do, Bobrovsky's going to have to steal a couple games. You look here, McDavid is your top point getter in Edmonton with 26 points. Barkov's your top with 17. McDavid's your top assist guy with 20 assists. Barkov is your top with 11. Bennett does have more goals than Draisaitl with 10 goals for Bennett and 7 for Draisaitl. But when you actually start to break down the goal scoring in Edmonton, you got Draisaitl with 7, Perry with 7, McDavid with 6, Connor Brown with 5, who is confirmed for game 1, Evander Kane with 5, Nugent Hopkins with 5, Adam Henrique with 4, Yarmark with 3, Kapanen with 3. And then you go to Florida, Bennett 10, Barkov and Verhaeghe 6, Lindell and Kachuk 5, Reinhardt only 4. The reason why I'm saying Reinhardt only 4 is this guy should have a lot more than 4 goals and 13 points in 15 games.
Oh, I agree.
Alyssa Ryan is 4, Brad Marchand 4, AJ Greer 2, and then Evan Rodriguez is 1 goal in 15 games. I do honestly think Edmonton's got the deeper forward group than Florida. Lane, you're looking at me like on Taco Tuesday, I decided to go with a Whopper.
Well, here's the thing that I don't think we're thinking about, right? Like, you know what? Florida doesn't have this much offense as Edmonton, and you can definitely have Edmonton for offensively throughout the playoffs has the advantage. But the one thing we're not talking about here is, outside of the first round, Edmonton really hasn't had a team to really push back against them, right? Like Vegas, they basically rolled over them. Vegas didn't really push back, and we saw Dallas basically all you had to do is shut down one guy, and the team was basically you rolled over them. Florida's not going to be a team that's going to let you push them over, right? Like you talk about who the key players are, like Sasha Barkov, and especially a guy like Sam Bennett, who's coming up to be an unrestricted free agent. And Sam Bennett's a guy we know he's going to make some really dirty plays and do some cheat shots to some of these guys like a Draisaitl, like a McDavid that can throw them off their game, right? So it's not always about the offense; it's about the mentality and the physicalness that this Panthers team has been able to bring in every round. And you see it throughout you saw it in the third round, the second round. Eventually, this team just wears you down and to a point where you can't even skate anymore. So this team, they bring different intangibles. I know you got the offense, but the defense of the Panthers is a very scary thing.
However, though, we've also been seeing the Edmonton forwards. They have worn teams down physically.
He's got his hand up.
But
Sorry, this is the second time Lane has sort of went into these verbs about. Didn't Lane send a message earlier today? Something with Bennett in a Leaf jersey, and then now we're just hearing them saying dirty, dig their top players.
Well, he is.
Maybe that's what you're thinking. The locker room needs in Toronto, maybe.
But I'm not saying he's not what he is. He's a guy who plays a very dirty play style. He's gonna throw cheap punches and say, "Oh, it was an accident. Oh, I tripped him down 10 flights of stairs. It was an accident. Oh, I stole his hockey bag and threw it into the garbage can. That was an accident." That's the kind of guy Sam Bennett is. I'm sorry to say.
You're right.
He's the kind of guy.
What I'm saying is, you want to see him in Toronto.
Oh, for sure. And we'll get into that later. But yeah,
Lane, you can say how on the podcast. It's okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But one thing, though, you mentioned about Florida having an easy road and only being tested by one team. I mean, Edmonton only being tested by one team. You could say the identical thing about Florida. They beat Tampa in 5. They beat Carolina in 5. They beat the Leafs in 7, but they basically just decided they want to come back to Toronto to try out a hamburger joint. Because 5 and 7 were complete blowouts. I would almost argue Florida had an easier road than Edmonton.
Oof.
Say what you want about the Edmonton-Vegas series. A lot of those games I felt could have went either way. Yeah, Dallas and Edmonton was disappointing. I was thoroughly disappointed with how bad Dallas played.
Yeah, I know.
I was thoroughly disappointed with how bad Carolina played. So I think both of these teams are coming in super fresh.
So do you compare Tampa and Edmonton as sort of the same style?
No, Edmonton is bigger than the Lightning, 100%, and they're not built around a goaltender. We saw with Vasilevsky, when Vasilevsky looked human, the Lightning suck. I'm just going to say it.
Mm.
And the difference is here it'll come down to what's better, building your team around a goalie or building your team around a forward. Right. You can argue with me all you want. The Florida Panthers are built around Sergei Bobrovsky.
Yeah.
That team, you even look at the games they lost last year, they were games where Bobrovsky looked human. Games that probably lost Bobrovsky the Conn Smythe, which, by the way, I thought was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Should have won the Conn Smythe last year. But Edmonton has been finding a way to win with good and bad goaltending. I haven't seen Florida win a game yet where Bobrovsky was human. Even look at the games Toronto won. Bobrovsky just played okay. Same thing, the one game the Lightning won. And, okay, the Carolina Hurricanes, they only scored 1 goal on Bobrovsky in their one game, in their one win. But Bobrovsky wasn't overly tested. So this is a series that I think is going to come down to which team can make their playing style work to their advantage, right? And we're going to have way more about this on our Wednesday preview show.
Way more.
We still need to get into the defense a little bit. I'm just going to say this flat out. Florida has the advantage on defense. It's not even a question.
No.
Yes. You're telling me that an 80% Ekholm, Evan Bouchard, who you don't know which Evan Bouchard you're getting half the time, and Brett Kulak and John Klingberg is better than the defense ran by Aaron Ekblad. You guys are out to lunch.
I don't know if they're better, but you got to remember, look what they've done without Matthias Ekholm, right, Jacob? Like you got to think, I don't think they're not necessarily better than Seth Jones and Aaron Ekblad. I'm not saying they're better, but what they have done is very impressive. Like the Oilers have been one of the, like you said, have been one of the better defending teams without Matthias Ekholm in the playoffs up until now, right? Like they were able to shut down the guy that we literally said on this podcast was the Michael Jordan on skates, the guy that no one could stop.
I did not say that.
Dan did not say that. But no, you got to be credit. You got to give this thing like credit. Like they did not have their top shutdown defenseman, and a lot of people said that Edmonton wouldn't get this far because they didn't have Matthias Ekholm in their lineup, and a lot of these guys who are on their decor who maybe don't have as big as names have been stepping up big time. Evan Bouchard's been fantastic. You got to even give a guy like their defenseman has been really good. Their defense has been really good.
It has, and I'm not denying that it hasn't. It's just
I 100
just so stacked.
Like Troy Stretcher. Look at Troy Stretcher, man. He's the guy who's a 7th defenseman, could barely.
I understand that, Lane, but your worst defenseman in Florida is a +1. That's your worst. You have Forsling +10, Jones +9, Mikkola +7, Ekblad +6, Schmidt +6, Baldwin is some name I can't pronounce 6, and Kulikov 1. I don't know. Defense is just absolutely stacked.
You know what? If you would have asked me this coming into the playoffs, I would have said 100% Florida has the advantage. However, I agree with Lane now watching the playoffs. And I actually put in the notes, Edmonton has the advantage. I think we have the advantage because of momentum. It's like what Draisaitl said in the interview. Draisaitl said, oh, yeah, everyone thinks our defense sucks and we don't play defensively, blah, blah, blah. It's like we're literally proving a point to everyone that, we can play defense too. John Klingberg just went in a time machine and went back 4 years, which is awesome. They did this without Ekholm. Bruce Baum, I would say, is the best defenseman in the playoffs, arguably. Daniel Nurse is, Nurse, but he's kind of making it work. Your worst defense is Stetzer, which he's pretty good, some defenseman. He didn't do anything spectacular. He didn't even terrible either. He looked pretty solid out there. And you got that Kulak, who I didn't really know anything about him. I thought he was kind of a nobody in Calgary, but he had a clear year in Edmonton this year, and he's played really well these playoffs. And then you have Ekholm at 80%, and I would take Ekholm at 10%. I mean, yeah, Florida's got the better superstar defense with Jones and Ekblad. Jones has really shocked me how good he's played. But overall, I think Edmonton's better.
Oh, you're done. Cool.
What page were you on?
That's rude. Did your mom teach you any manners, Jacob?
You know my mom very well. Okay, at the end of the day, this Florida defense has taken every single team, the way they pinch and the way they play as a unit. Yeah, I agree. What guys like Jake Wallman have done is cute.
Oh, Wallman, I forgot about him too.
Oh, he's
do this against a Florida team that pounds you relentlessly. That's saw true. When Brandon Tanev looked average all of a sudden. When he was one of the best shutdown defensemen in the league, then you put him up compared to Florida and he looked average. Chazzy, can you please bring some sanity to this conversation? Or are you going to make me read the next page of my book?
You might think I'm sorry. 1 sec, guys. Sorry. Just keep going without me.
So Chazzy is so fed up with you boys, he is just running away. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at this, and I don't think there's really a comparison on defense. Yeah, I think what Edmonton's defense has done is nice. It's not. You can't tell me the depth of Florida's defense doesn't outplay Edmonton's.
If you're sitting there listening on Spotify or iHeartRadio, whatever you're listening on right now, and screaming at your phone, thinking we're nuts and winning away like Chazzy did, you can join the conversation on our live show when we'll do a full first round preview and get going way deeper into all kinds of different areas of 1v1 versus Edmonton versus Florida. But if you think we're crazy, join the conversation and call us crazy. Oh, you agree with Jacob and agree with Jacob. Join in the conversation on our live show.
Agreeing me is the right thing to do. I am the self-proclaimed sports analyst. But Chaz, you know what? Who cares about the CEO? CEOs never do anything anyway. So let's move on to who's going to win game one. And it's Panthers or Oilers. I am going to say the Oilers hold serve at home. I'm actually going to say this right now on the Strickers On podcast. I think they win game 1 and game 2. But they're going to win game 1. Lane, what do you think?
I'm with you. I think they win game 1. I think this is a different team than what we saw last year, right? Like they were a team that relied a lot on Draisaitl and McDavid to get this offense going. And I feel like this is a really different team. They got a lot more depth down there. Their defense has been more improved. Their goalies, I feel like Skinner's locked in, and that's a scary thing. Once he gets locked in, he's definitely someone to be threatened of. I think the Edmonton Oilers are going to take instead of going down 3-0, I think they're going to at least get their foot in the door. They know they need to get a win. I think they take game 1.
Dan, what are your thoughts here? Remember, if you don't agree with us, just challenge us in the Streakers app. But Dan, what's your thought?
I think Edmonton will take game 1 as well. However, I wouldn't get too excited, Jacob, thinking Edmonton's going to run away with 2-0 series lead and the end of game 2. Like, I do think this series will go 7. I think these teams are very even, just have very different skill sets. And this is a rematch of last year. It went to 7. I mean,
Nope.
I think Edmonton can win, and I hope they do win. But I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park for Edmonton.
I'm not saying walk in the park, but I'm saying you're going to win your games at home. You got the best home, the home ice advantage, which we'll talk about more on our preview show on Wednesday. But home ice advantage is going to be huge. But I do want to ask you boys, and I'm going to start with Lane. Will Stuart Skinner make at least 25 saves?
25 saves. Yeah, I think he will. I think 25. I think Florida will probably get about 30 shots, and I think he'll make at least 25 saves. I'm going to say yes for that one.
So Dan, you're not answering this one because you're just going to be all grumpy. But I'm going to ask you a different one. Is Sasha Barkov going to be at least a +2?
Oh yeah, 100%.
+2. That's going to be tough. He's going to be going against the McDavid line. And
that's fine. He's the best two-way non-North American setter in the NHL.
Never mind non-North American. He just won the Selke, so he is the best two-way.
Okay, yeah, but even better. He's the best.
However, I think he won't get his +2 because Connor McDavid's going to get at least 2 points. I don't see McDavid coming into this series half asleep the way he did last year in the playoffs. I think McDavid and Draisaitl are going to go on a bit of a run to start this series, and it's going to be very hard for Sasha Barkov's line to handle it.
Right.
But remember, download the Streakers app and play along with us because you never know what kind of party it is until you join a Streakers gaming party. Now, Lane, you have a lot of crazy news that's going on in the NHL, like so much news that I probably needed another 17 coffees. So what's going on, Lane?
Well, this first one is reported by Satir Sahai. I hope I say that right. He's a game host for Sportsnet 650 for the Vancouver Canucks. He's reporting that he's seen a report from the trade that Mikko Rantanen for Martin Necas may not be going so well, not only for how Carolina, but not looking good for Colorado, as reported that after the Avalanche moved Rantanen because of how difficult the contract structures are going and how much patience they have with Necas, he's not a homegrown player or a superstar talent. And if negotiations start slowly in July, there was sort of a sense that Necas wasn't overly thrilled with his experience in Colorado and that he might also be looking at some exterior options as well.
Holy moly.
So it looks
Toronto,
like it's kind of,
please and thank you.
I don't know, but you say that, but we'll get into that maybe on another time. I don't know if I want Martin Necas because you're telling me he didn't want to be on Carolina because of attitude issues. Now he's gone to Colorado, who's supposed to be a Stanley Cup winning team, and he's got attitude issues there. That's a major red flag for me if I'm a Stanley Cup team.
I agree. I
don't want Necas didn't want to be in Carolina. Carolina felt they needed Rantanen.
No, he said that. He said that he wasn't going to resign.
Well, screw you guys. I'm going home. I don't know.
I don't know.
I just mean we did talk about that on our Leaf post-mortem show that the Leafs could be making a big move via trades and Necas could be a big move. But I do see your point, Lane, about that. But Lane, you also mentioned about the New York Rangers might be sellers coming into the draft.
Elliot Friedman today on Sportsnet 590 reported the Rangers might be a team who needs some extra cell phones, so they might have to go to Rogers or go shopping around the local mall and get some good deals, as it reports that their phone might be very busy the next few weeks as GM Drury says he is ready to hear some offers on some of the players. As you know, it was a pretty disappointing season for the New York Rangers, right? This was a team that they thought they were going to be a Metro first in the Metro and high up in the playoffs, and look where they ended up. So it looks like they might be taking a lot of phone calls over the next few weeks headed into the draft.
And let's be honest. Go ahead, Dan.
I'm not totally surprised about the Rangers being sellings at this point. I am surprised about the Nietzsche's rumors because, let's face it, if Nietzsche's walked from Colorado, Lantanen walked from Carolina, Dallas lost in the conference final. If these three things happen from this one trade, it could be the worst trade in NHL history.
It could be.
And the crazy thing is, you kind of look at it, Carolina kind of won out of it all because they got Stakeholden, they got Taylor Hall, and they got them both on contract, and they got, 2 free first-round picks?
Yeah. And speaking
of the
of
Rangers, we could see big changes coming in the Rangers, though, because you only have $8 million in cap space, and Panarin's an unrestricted free agent.
Huh.
So to make that work, the only way you do it is if you move on from guys. I've been reading reports that Chris Kreider could be on the open market. Actually, speaking of a player for Toronto.
Yeah,
Chris Kreider. Oh, sign me up, and I don't know, whatever. You also have Shesterkin coming in, continuing his huge deal that you can't move. So you also have Carton Solsi, his contract's coming up. So you have a couple pretty good players that need to be potentially moved. And speaking of a move, we have Chazzy back on the Streakers Island podcast, ladies and gentlemen. He had to run away because he was sick and tired of you guys disrespecting the Florida Panthers.
No, my apologies.
But Chazzy, we're done disrespecting the Florida Panthers defense. Talk about how the Rangers might be sellers at the deadline. Not the deadline, at the draft day, which is the deadline for when they need to start making moves. But, Lane, what else do you have reported here? I'm seeing that the Vegas Marner rumor is kind of what our friend of the program, Alex, was saying. It might be poo-poo caca.
Yeah, so CJ on his on his show, he was kind of talking about the whole rumors of Marner going to Vegas. It looks like that might be a lot of overblown conversation. Vegas is reportedly looking at guys like a Sam Bennett role where they want to get more physical. And I'm hearing this a lot. The teams are they're skeptical to go for the Marners because, not that Marner isn't good, but his whole playoff performance is coming into the conversation of why players and some of these teams are kind of scared to sign a guy like Mitch Marner because of the playoffs, and they're looking more guys like Sam Bennett who have this kind of rough tugged physicality, dirty mentality that have this rough tugginess with them. And a lot of these teams like Carolina, who has also come out and said they want to bolster their lineup with Sam Bennett guys. So this is going to be a really good year for guys who are very physical and don't put up a lot of points because they're going to get paid a lot of money.
Yeah, boy.
Honestly, I think quickly going to that, I think Marner, you're more seeing going to a team like LA that's more looking for skill and speed than physicality. They have lots of it. Also, watch out for Utah. People are saying Carolina or Vegas. I've never really thought either team's really going to go.
He's going to Utah. I see Marner going into a non-big city market. I don't think Marner cares about play. I don't think Marner really cares about the Stanley Cup. I think Marner wants to make highlight of the night.
Chazzy.
So I'm just saying, I think he wants to win highlight of the night TSN every night. I think he wants to play his 82 games a year, get his 100 points, make his $14 million, and go back to golf course.
Now, moving away from that, because we'll talk more about the DNA later in the show. We were literally just comparing Stuart Skinner to Bobrovsky and complimenting Stuart Skinner more than I ever thought I would, unless I became his mother. But Lane, you were talking about off camera how Edmonton almost moved Skinner to bring in Jeremy Swayman.
Yeah, apparently this was a conversation that David Pagnotta in his article and on his local website, the Fourth Period, reported. Apparently, Edmonton actually called Boston about the availability of Jeremy Swayman after he signed his extension.
Oh,
so
after.
So it looked like at the time the Edmonton Oilers, during that negotiation process, we're potentially looking to bring in a guy like Jeremy Swayman and maybe not believing in Stuart Skinner. Now, mind you, Stuart Skinner only has, I think, a short-term contract with the Oilers. So I'm not surprised that they might have been looking at a younger guy to be the franchise goalie, considering he had such a good year the year before coming into that, and knowing Boston wasn't really willing to give up that money for him. So that doesn't totally surprise me, but I wasn't suspecting it would be the Edmonton Oilers knocking down that door.
Yeah, it's tough with Edmonton because with Stuart Skinner, as Dan has pointed out on multiple episodes, you don't know what Stuart Skinner you're getting.
Right.
But mind you, you can make the same argument now with Jeremy Swayman.
I was just going to say that. Like, I don't blame Edmonton. I don't blame Edmonton for going for a goalie, but Jeremy Swayman, it's like Stuart Skinner, but double the price. Like, why would you do that?
I disagree with that 100%. I think this is a 1-year thing with Jeremy Swayman. I think this is just one of those things where this happens with every player who sits out and misses training camp. They always seem to have a bad year because you miss out on, like I said, and I said this before on the podcast, when you don't have that proper, you're not able to use your facilities and not be able to talk with your trainers and your nutritionists, and you're missing out practice with the boys. You miss out on the morale. Every player who sends to do these kind of sit outs always has a really down year. They always come back, just like William Nylander has, just like many players have done this. I do not believe this is a thing for Jeremy Swayman, that he's just all of a sudden he's just 24-year-old goalie who can't save a beach ball. I totally don't think that's what it is. I think you're going to see him bounce back to above numbers.
I'm playing the world's smallest violin about that sob story there for these guys. You're a professional athlete with probably access to any training facility in the world. Get over it.
Maybe, but I don't know. But you do.
Elaine, I'm not even disagreeing with you because I think a lot of these professional athletes are kind of babies. But at the end of the day, they need to grow a pair.
I also remember people saying Stuart Skinner, exact same story a couple years ago. Oh, it's just one bad year. Here we are 3 years later. He still sucks.
Here we are 3 years later, back-to-back, going to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah.
Say what you want. The Edmonton Oilers have a different DNA where they find ways to get there. I'm going to keep bringing up DNA like I'm Kendrick Lamar on the DNA album. Lane, I know you want to talk a little bit about some Dallas Stars stuff, but I want to get in a little bit about the Dallas Stars.
Stuff with Jacob cut out of the show.
I want to get into a bit of the Dallas Stars situation with Pete DeBoer. It's reported that the players were not happy with the way Game 5 was handled. They were not happy with the way the post conference was handled. Here, Pete DeBoer is now saying Jake Ottinger won't talk to him. I can't imagine why. So I think there's major changes coming to Dallas. However, Lane, you're hearing that Matt Duchene apparently is not one of those guys who seems to care about that.
Yeah, it looks like Matt Duchene, according to all resources, has been told that he wants to stay. This is coming from Chris Johnson once again. I just want to make sure Chris Johnson on his show said that, pending UFA, Matt Duchene apparently does want to stay in Dallas. But going back onto what you were saying about Pete DeBoer, right? Like, it's one thing, to be critical of your team, but I really feel like Pete DeBoer, and he's had this kind of stigma follow him a lot. He's very critical. You also go back, he's the player who kind of treated Marc-Andre Fleury with a lot of disrespect too. Right. So he has, even though he's a great coach and he's probably the best Game 7 coach. And believe me, if I was the Leafs, I would sign him because he's 9-0 in Game 7s. But there is definitely a stigma about him that he tends to kind of, as they say, as they put the gif in, put the dagger in your back and kind of stab you where it hurts when you haven't really deserved it. He's very critical of his players, and this is another situation, just like he did with Marc-Andre Fleury in Vegas, where he's kind of made Jake Ottinger made him feel like he's not wanted, and they want him, and no wonder he won't talk to him after he basically said, "I won't blame him, but I'm blaming him."
Well, exactly.
Because too, I'm gonna say this right now here. I think Vegas wins their cup sooner if they don't do what they did to Marc-Andre Fleury. It took them a couple years to find a goal. Robert Leonard was not the answer, and Aiden Hill was the answer for 1 year. Wasn't the answer again this year. So I argue that Vegas would be in a better situation without a guy like Pete DeBoer. Pete DeBoer only has 1 year left on his contract, so that is definitely a storyline to be watching out for. That we will be watching.
I could see that ending a lot sooner than a year.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
I won't be surprised if Pete DeBoer's fired before free agent frenzy.
Whoa, yeah.
You got to send a message, right? Players aren't going to want to come there with Pete DeBoer as the coach.
My $1 million question is,
I'll go $1 million.
Or you're shipping your goalie, one or the other.
Or you're doing both.
well, the
I
other
don't know if
thing,
Odger wants to play for Dallas ever again.
well, the other thing too
Or
is
the coach.
Lane's talking about Matt Duchene here, which is an interesting
We're not
point.
sponsored by Matt Duchene, but we could be.
Matt Duchene's still in that age where he's old enough to know what's going on, but it's not a senior citizen. You know, he's kind of at prime age. And, you know, he did not so well in the playoffs. We all know that. But he was a point-to-game player in the season, 85 points, 82 games. I mean, a centerman like that in his prime age, what is he going to hit the open market? Like, 8.5, 9 million? So my question is, how is Dallas going to afford him? And if they do, how big of a hometown discount, not that Matt Duchene's from Dallas, Texas, but if he wants to stay there, how big of a discount is Duchene going to take in order to stay at Dallas? Is he going to sign for 5 or 6? Because I think in an open market, like, let's be honest, Jacob would probably agree with me. I would rather have Matt Duchene at $8 million than John Tavares at $8 million.
I think he's going to take a lot less than he'd stay in Dallas. Kind of like when you look at the Yarny Gord contract in Tampa, right? He took a big discount to stay in the Lightning. Like, what was it, Lane? Like, just under $3 million a year for Yarny Gord in an open market. He's worth a lot more than that.
But he went for 6, no? 5 or 6 years?
Long? Yeah, 6 years, but only $2.33 million. Like, for
wow,
that's a steal for Yarny Gord. So I think Matt Duchene.
Like that.
But I also heard Jamie Benn wants to stay in Dallas, so he'll.
I don't care. I don't think Dallas should not want Jamie Benn.
Well, unless he takes a pay cut, significant.
I don't care if he takes $1.
I would sign Jamie Benn for $5 million.
Oh, give me a break! You want to give everyone $5 million and say Matthew Knies isn't worth $1 over 6? Like,
no.
Yes,
I said Matthew Knies is worth 6.5.
You're eating your name. I think you're so perplexed.
I think Jamie Benn's worth about 5. You look at Matthew Knies. Okay, what he did was cute. It's very good. I very liked it. But it's like, can you say Matthew Knies is better than Zach Hyman at this point? I can't say
we're not. Oh my! No, but apples to oranges. Like,
no, we're not.
They are. It is not. That's like when everyone compared Kachuk to Huberdeau, even though Mackenzie Weegar is in the deal. Number one. Number two, Matthew Knies was drafted. Zach Hyman left in free agency. They're not. It's enough with this comparison. Number three, giving Jamie Benn $5 million. He wouldn't even get that in the open market. He's a $3 million guy all day at his age, his lack of skating ability, and he's a winger. Look, Lane is so disgusted he became a silhouette. He's sick of this crap. Look, Silhouette Lane has left the chat. But
drinking my water.
But I think it's time we move on to the Canadian Football League. And before we get into the surprising,
just quickly, I gotta give huge props to Lane here. He did so much digging for the show over the NHL news, and I don't know how I missed it today, but I missed most of that. So good job, Mr. Lane.
Thank you, Dan.
Giving Lane random props at 2:29 in the morning. But before we get into all the CFL stuff, we do have I'm sure people know about this by now, but Milt Stiegel's son, Chase Stiegel, passed away at 20. It was an unexpected death, and I can only imagine how hard it is to lose a son. And especially the way it was, he was young, he was vibrant, playing soccer at the university level, had a bright future ahead of him. Everyone said he was just a bright personality. If it was anything like his dad, I'm sure he was the life of the party. So I just wanted to, before we get into the CFL, just, take a minute to pay respects to Guy and Chase Stiegel. And we wish the whole Stiegel family all the best. I just wanted to get into that before we get into some of the CFL stuff, where Dan's probably going to start yelling and screaming like a lunatic. Chazzy's just going to be happy that Calgary didn't do anything stupid in their training camp. I don't know how Lane feels about the Tiger Cats cutting Luther Hakanavanu. I love just saying that name as well. But I want to get into the biggest cut in training camp, and I have a conspiracy theory about it. but Kadeem Carey was cut by the Toronto Argos. And yeah, I was a lot of messages that we got DM'd when we shared it on the Streakers On podcast story on Instagram. Make sure you're following us on social media. We're a hoot. And I have a crazy conspiracy theory about this, and it goes with something about Chad Kelly. So Chad Kelly, we have no idea when he's going to be back. Let's just be realistic. Yeah, he could practice. The type of injury he has, you don't know. So if you're Toronto, you have to ride with 4 quarterbacks right now. Once Chad Kelly is back, do you cut one? I think maybe they cut one of the quarterbacks and bring back Kadeem Carey. It's kind of like, do you remember when the Toronto Maple Leafs sent Jason Spezza down to the Marlies, and Jason Spezza just publicly said, if you pick me up on waivers, I will retire?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if this is that situation. I could be wrong, and Kadeem Carey could be going to, well, he won't be going to Calgary. He hates Calgary. But maybe to the Ottawa Red Blacks to go with him and William Stanback as the deadliest 1-2 punch in the CFL. But mind you, Walter Fletcher also got cut, so 2 very good running backs are available. Walter Fletcher out of Montreal.
And didn't Argos cut Brown too?
They also cut Kevin Brown.
Which made no sense to me. You had a 1-2 punch and running back, probably the best running back duo in the league.
No.
And they cut both of them. I'm like,
Kevin Brown had a bad camp. I like the guy. He had a bad camp. And when you also have
practice, bro.
It's not just practice. You look at a guy like Williams, who had a phenomenal camp, and so did Mitchell. The Toronto Argos were in a very tough situation where, truthfully, they probably had 5 running backs they liked. And it's a cap world as well, but keep your eye on Kadeem Carey. I wonder if there's a little more to that.
He had a great year last year.
I don't know. Chazzy, what do you think? Do you think I'm nuts, or could you see what I'm saying? It's like the Jason Spezza effect.
Possibly, because you guys say that the CFL contracts are what, 1 year and maybe 2, unless you're a stud, you're getting a long term.
But I mean, Kadeem Carey, you got to remember, he was Toronto's MOP candidate, rushed over 1,000 yards, was big in that Grey Cup game. So it seems like a crazy situation, but at the same time, we also talk about how a GM has to be willing to make bold moves, and the Argos made a very bold move with this.
Yeah.
We also quickly touched on Walter Fletcher being cut by the Owls. Reports are saying from the coaching staff, Walter Fletcher just got outplayed in training camp. He just did not come ready to play. He did not come ready to ball. And I really think in a league that has as much talent as it does with only 9 teams, if you do not come ready to go, then you can just go.
Wow.
And if you don't make the club, where do they go?
Home.
Free agents.
So they're just sitting until
someone signs them. If
God
someone
forbid
signs
any
them.
injuries happen, where someone's
if any
getting called up.
injuries, another club picks them up. It's tough to say, right? The CFL, it's tough because it's not like there are practice squads, but a lot of these guys don't want to be on practice squads.
I don't blame them.
And it's a tough situation because, again, in a 9-team league, and when I say this, I love the CFL, but in a 9-team league, it is very hard because I argue the CFL is more talent than people give it credit for. Right? I think it's a very high-end league. Like, in my opinion, as much as I love the CFL, the NFL is your premier league, and then the CFL is right behind it. Like, and then the UFL and XFL, that's just for the 4,000 fans who want the cheap beer. And that's no disrespect to those guys. There's still talented players in those leagues. I don't mean that. But, like, the CFL and the NFL are definitely your 2 premier leagues. And with only 9 teams in a premier league, you're going to have good players without a job. There's only so many jobs in the league. I feel the same way about Cameron Dukes being cut by the Toronto Argos. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's very mobile. He's got a very accurate to short to medium throws. The long ball has been an issue with him for the last couple seasons, and we've seen that in Toronto. I'll be honest, a lot of people were surprised about him being cut. I wasn't. I
wasn't surprised about Cameron Dukes being cut either because Jacob and I went to the Blue on Blue game. And Cameron Dukes did look weak against the other quarterbacks. Nick Arbuckle looked like he was ready with an Everglade Cup. And, this, I get his name mixed up. Tucker Horn?
Tucker Horn. Good job.
I keep wanting to call his last name Tucker because it's Darcy Tucker. But anyway, I keep wanting to call him Horn Tucker. But I don't know. But anyway, this Tucker Horn came out of nowhere. Looked really good. And like Jacob said, in salary cap world, you can't ignore someone that looks good. It's like Williams as the running back. Rich Williams came out of nowhere, but he looked really good in a double blue game, and he looked really good in the preseason. So, but Gary is like a franchise player. So cutting a franchise player. I know in CFL they don't really make trades, but I don't know why they didn't make a trade or something.
Because Dan, every team's got a stud running back. And Devontae McMahon, I think they think can be their horse.
So here comes my point. Like with the quarterbacks, you need to have more teams in the CFL.
Yeah, but we're not going to get more teams tomorrow, so you got to accept it.
Yeah.
But you also look at a guy like Alexander Hollins, who was one of the leading receivers in the league, got cut by the Elks. This is the one that I am absolutely shocked, because I don't think the Elks have that pure cut number one wide receiver, and I thought Alex Hollins was going to replace Eugene Lewis on this group. You have a very young quarterback in Trey Ford, who I think needs really good receivers to play with. If Hollins wasn't fitting in your lineup, then find a way to make him fit. If you're Edmonton,
correct me if I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
But was Edmonton the team like Winnipeg that didn't want to spend up to the cap? They wanted to leave some room.
No, but they were the team that the GM flat out said there are no superstars in the CFL. So I wonder
That's
if
what
that
it
was an
was,
issue
yeah.
with a superstar like Hollins. Like, there's good players that got cut this year, right? And
really good players.
Even in Montreal, another surprise was Jordan Vesey, who had 5 catches, 79 yards, and a touchdown in the preseason. Was in the NFL for a few years, bounced between the Titans, Jaguars, Colts, and Bills, and Washington. Actually, in the Texans and the Raiders. Dressed for 2 regular season games. He also had a stint in the UFL at the Seattle Sea Dragons and the San Antonio Burmans. So, I mean, this is a guy that's, he's been around the league for a long time. The Alouettes are a group that usually likes receivers like this. They took a big gamble on Austin Mack that really paid off.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You don't have Reggie White in your group anymore. It's same with Cooley and Grant. So I was expecting them to keep a guy like Jordan Vesey to try to fill that gap at a cheap price. They just said, screw your chicken strips, and they didn't want him.
That was a huge shocker.
I am very surprised as well. And Lane, I kind of want your thoughts on this. I know Luther Hanakavanu did have this best year last year, but I was kind of surprised he isn't on your roster moving forward.
I don't know. I kind of look at the way the Ticats, and I know Jacob doesn't like this, but they said the Ticats have the best quarterback right now, and I feel like you brought in a guy like Kenny Lawler, right? And when you want to make an addition, you got to make a subtraction, and I just feel like maybe you got Tim White and Lawler as your 1-2 punch. Maybe they just didn't feel like Luther. I don't know how to say his last name, but Hakavanu is maybe not the guy who's going to get enough reps. There you go. But maybe they just didn't value, like they didn't see the value in keeping him and as like a 4th string receiver, because you're going to be. I'm assuming you're going to want to be putting the ball a lot putting the ball in the hands of Tim White and Kenny Lawler, right? They're going to be your 1-2 punch going forward for Bo Levi Mitchell there. So I just say maybe like you said, sometimes when you get a good player, you got to take away a good player. So I just see it for that value. And Bo Levi Mitchell will still have his 1-2 punch with a pretty good back end. And it looks like from what I've seen so far in the preseason, Ticats look way more improved than coming into this year than they did last year.
The weird thing is, though, this is a little weird for me to say as an Argo fan. I thought the Ticats were a very good 0-3 team when they started the year 0-3. They were right there in their games. There's usually just one mental screw up. They're just like, what the are they doing? But overall, I felt they played well. I do agree with you, Lane. I think the Ticats have taken that next step. Like I have said, I think the East is wide open, which speaking of that, we will have a CFL preview show live on Thursday leading into the first game of the regular season. So make sure you're ready for that because it's going to be very, very, very exciting. Chazzy, I'm sure you're very pleased to see the Calgary Stampeders didn't do anything crazy. The big name that they cut, Logan Bonner. And I thought that made perfect sense cutting him. The only thing you did lose earlier was you lost Tommy Stevens to free agency. But, I mean, you brought in your big stud quarterback in Vernon Adams Jr. You brought in the receivers. I think Calgary looks really good heading into the season.
Yeah, I took a glimpse at week 1, and it looks like we're playing Lane's Tiger Cats.
Mm-hmm.
And Lane, you kind of want to talk about Taylor Powell, which, by the way, I think he will be a very good starting quarterback once Bully Van Mitchell retires.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys got to see him up close and personal. What did you guys think? And I know you guys don't like tight cats, so
man, this kid's got an arm. Taylor Powell has an arm that can fit the ball into tight windows.
Yeah, he's good.
I was actually a fan of his prior. And yeah, Lane, the beef with Tie Cats, it's more like how Leaf fans and Hab fans kind of poke fun at each other. I'm not going to pour beer over you just because you're a Tie Cats fan. Number one, that's a waste of beer. Number two, I'm not that kind of guy. But I think Taylor Powell is, he's a very strong quarterback. And getting into a little bit quickly of the PFF quarterback ratings, according to PFF, which is all performance based off their stats. Sounded like a UFO just went by. That was
it's a train.
It's a train. Can't tell you about. But Lane, I am not upset about Hamilton's QB group being rated number 1. I actually think that's reasonable. Although you threw the most interceptions in the league, you also threw the most yards in the league. And Bo Levi Mitchell was the East MOP. What I really don't agree with is Toronto ranked at 9. 9. That's insane.
Now I wonder.
Didn't you just say you had 5 quarterbacks?
Yeah, 4.
Yeah,
but it is comparing the top 2. Chad Kelly won the MOP 2 years ago. Last year, Nick Arbuckle wins the Grey Cup MVP, and you're telling me this is the 9th? This is the worst quarterback group in the entire league?
Ridiculous, bro.
Jacob, I wonder if they put that there because, and maybe I could be wrong, but I'm wondering if they looked at Chad Kelly because of like what's going on with his injury, that maybe Nick Arbuckle might be kind of feeling like a one punch for a little while there. And I did see something about how they felt like, they said like they acknowledged it was pretty low, but they said once Chad Kelly gets back in action and gets more healthy, they feel like it could go up a little bit more. So they kind of addressed their controversy a little bit, being like, well, we don't actually think they're 9th, but with how Chad Kelly may not miss a few games and Nick Arbuckle kind of feels like he has to take the lead, the reins for a little bit, that's why they kind of put them 9th. You kind of agree?
Yeah, but it's not even just this. Number 1, I'm sorry, Nick Arbuckle was better than Davis Alexander in Montreal. I'm going to put that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Maybe you're putting them higher because of the backup and McLeod Buffalo Thompson. Also, too, putting Winnipeg at 7. Zach Collero's preseason looked unbelievable.
Oh, he looked amazing in the preseason. He had something to prove.
You're putting Drew Brown at 8. Drew Brown and Dustin Crum. You got Dustin Crum, who's a quarterback that can bomb at 60 yards, that can track you like a fullback. I'm not a running back, like a fullback.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this right now, too. I'm flipping 1 and 2. I am putting Calgary as the best quarterback room in the league with Vernon Adams Jr. as your starting quarterback going into week 1. Because also PJ Tucker, I thought, really showed improvements throughout the preseason. And I'm going to be, Elaine, and I'm not just saying this because I'm not a Tie Cats fan, okay? I am personally moving the Tie Cats quarterback room to 3rd. I think Trevor Harris is very underrated. And you have Jake Mayer as your backup, which, like him or lump him, Jake Mayer is a guy with a lot of experience, right? Yeah. Some people find his play as sleepy looking as Dan when we record at 2:45 in the morning. But
his eyes are open this week.
I'm just busting your chops, Dan. But the quarterback room, there's 2 quarterback rooms that I think should drastically drop. And funny enough, it's what they rated at 4 and 5. Nathan Rourke, if you're talking about a question mark quarterback.
Yeah, that's true.
Is the 2nd biggest question mark quarterback behind Davis Alexander in Montreal. I think this is the worst quarterback group going in. I think BC is the worst because you have Nathan Rourke. You have no idea if you have Nathan Rourke from 3 years ago or Nathan Rourke from 10 minutes ago. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I love Jeremiah Masoli. I think he's a stand-up dude.
I was never a fan of that guy.
Well, screw you.
Fan? No, it's not, I got to be honest. Is a Tie Cats fan, and I could be wrong, but I just felt like whenever I watched him, it felt like he panicked under pressure a lot. Like
he does. You're right.
He was a very pocket quarterback, and I felt like if he didn't get 40 seconds to throw the ball, it was always like he was panicking, not really knowing what to do. I actually really did not like Jeremiah Masoli at all. Like I always felt like he was costing us a lot of games, and I went to a lot of games. Whereas seeing him as a league quarterback. I got to be honest, I wasn't a fan.
Now, my big thing with Jeremiah Masoli is he hasn't been able to stay healthy the last 3 years.
I was going to say that. He's had a really rough load. I think considering everything he's gone through, the fact that he's even in the league, I give him a lot of respect. for that. And I was surprised someone like Dustin Crum or Masoli were not cut in these things. You would think, with you would think in theory, like
Dustin Crum.
No, I wouldn't personally. I'm
Okay.
just surprised. You would think with no, I really like Dustin Crum. I think Ottawa has to keep him. I'm just saying, you look at all the great players that are now available, they might take a gamble and pick one of them and get rid of someone that they have. And that's
Dan
what
really likes Dustin Crum.
I do.
Like, almost as much as William Nylander.
Oh,
Well, I don't know about that, but he's really good. He's a good dude.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I will say, though, I'm just sitting here just hearing Jacob and Lane taking it all in. And I've been saying this on the podcast for a while now. The CFL has so much talent, it needs at least one more team. And I'm looking at all the players that got cut. We could probably do this in a future episode. Like, you could do a expansion draft based on the players that got cut, and you could probably build a pretty good 10th team.
Funny enough, they actually did that on Third Down Nation.
So I'm not the only one who thinks that.
Highly recommend that website. And actually, you know what? It was a decent team. Lacked a little bit in quarterback, but besides that, it was a pretty decent team. But
even Cameron Dukes is 500 last year. 1,500 yards.
But I am personally 4th and 5th. I would actually drop down to 8th and 9th. And I think between Ottawa, Winnipeg, and Toronto, it's kind of a toss-up between those ones. And then I put Edmonton just under those guys. Mm-hmm. Because Zach Collaros, the big question mark is, are you going to get Zach Collaros in the first half of the season or the second half of the season?
Boy, he looked good in preseason, though.
He looked good in the preseason, and he looked terrible in the Grey Cup. Mind you, he did dislocate a finger, and he couldn't hold on to a football. I think that was just bad coaching, keep putting him in.
It was
and
really
the same
bad.
thing with Toronto. I think Nick Arbuckle is probably one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the CFL. I'm just going to put that out there. I think he's
the best backup in the CFL.
No, he's not. McLeod Buffalo Thompson's best backup in the CFL, but Nick Arbuckle's right up there. And I think with Nick Arbuckle, he's a guy under the right system, can be very good. But you might be saying to yourself,
Toronto's a backup nowadays too.
True. You might be saying to yourself, there are more to the CFL than just quarterbacks. But as I randomly yelled into the microphone about, we will be doing a CFL preview show. That's going to be on Thursday around 7 or 7:30. We're still ironing out the details because Dan needs time to eat his muffins. And Chazzy has to send him the muffins. And milk.
I don't even like muffins, bro.
Dan, you are a secret muffin person. Like, I
gotta send Whipson his muffin and ice cap.
I guarantee you, Dan, if you go into the trunk of his Mercedes that may or may not have Carlton card boxes in it, you will find a bunch of muffins. I bet he likes brand muffins because he's always talking about going to the bathroom. But we will have a CFL preview show. But I think it's time we move on to the Toronto Blue Jays. And
hopefully I don't poop my pants. Oh, he's wearing muffins.
Anyways, the Toronto Blue Jays are on a 5-game winning streak heading into tonight's series against the Phillies. And in this 5-game winning streak, you've had games where they've won it by scoring a lot of runs. You've had games where you've won it by really strong defense and pitching.
98 wins, baby.
The only thing that's kind of weird is, besides of the couple blowout games, we haven't had a lot of like 5-1 games where you've kind of seen it all come together. They're either blowing teams out or it's a nail biter. But at the end of the day, you've won 5 in a row. I think 98 wins. I still think you're completely out to lunch. But could this be the turning point for this team? I don't know. Yeah. We said that after one of the 12-0 wins a couple weeks ago, and then they were completely terrible again for 4 or 5 days.
Sure.
I
have as much faith in this team as I have as much faith as the Leafs in the Game 7.
For difference of that 12-0 win was great, but it was one game. This time we got a winning streak, just like streakers. We got 5 games, bro. So it's not just a one game, right? They're actually building something. And maybe they can turn this 5 into 6. Who knows?
It's going to be tough. I mean,
a tough team to beat right now.
They got a tough team to beat, and you also have a lot of injuries on the way. With now David Schneider's coming back up, but Darton Varshov's with a left hamstring strain has been placed on 10-day IL. Eric Swanson, though, has been reinstated from the 60-day IL. And
that's big for the bullpen.
But then you sent down Easton Lucas down to AAA, and I'll be honest, I think Easton Lucas has looked pretty good. I don't know. It's a weird one about that. But Layton, you kind of, I don't know if you want to rant about injuries. I don't know if you want to say you are hoping to become their massage therapist and fix all the injuries. But Layton, you want to talk injuries?
No, I just was. Well, I was at the game with Dalton Varsho when that happened, and I got to be honest. At first I thought he stopped running, and honestly, after seeing it on the replay on the jumbotron, it looked really bad, and I feel really bad for Dalton Varsho. Like, here's a guy who, at first when I got him, I was like, why did we get this guy? His fielding was at the he's just another Kevin Pillar, and
I've always liked him.
And I got to give him credit over the last 2 seasons. He's really turned his hitting up and been a really good hitter for the Jays. And I really felt like he was just starting to get his mojo back in the batting box there. And to see what happened there, where he had a triple turn into an out because of a hamstring that honestly looked really bad. And I'm hoping it's just a hamstring, because I got to be honest, the way it looked when he was coming off the field there from an up close view did not look good.
At least he wasn't like George Springer just hopping up and down.
Oh, that was funny.
It was funny because they won. If they had lost that game, it would have been really bad. But this has just been the issue with the Jays all year. They can't, never mind all year, it lasts about 3 or 4 years. This team just cannot stay healthy, right? Yeah. They're a team that always seems to be injured. And Chazzy, I remember when we talked about the Jays going into this season, you said this team just had to stay healthy. And clearly they just cannot.
Oh, I know definitely the pitchers, and I know you guys gave me the news a couple weeks ago about Max Scherzer coming back, but he's a big pitcher, right? We're obviously not going to get what he's done earlier in his career, but he definitely adds some flavor to that ball club in the clubhouse, right? So once you get him back, we only had him for one or two batters, so.
Yeah, I know.
When you get veterans like that, you want them to play, right? And they add to that, I don't know, just add to the excitement of the team, and losing him early. And then however, the bullpen I find has held up pretty good so far.
And that's why I'm kind of surprised with a guy like Easton Lucas being opted down the AAA.
That makes no sense.
He played at a high level. And I understand they're getting some studs back in the pitching and getting back some bullpen guys. But I don't know if I want to lose Easton Lucas. I think he's played really well. I mean, I guess in AAA he's going to get more opportunities for his development, and that's all fine and dandy and blah, blah, blah. Everyone loves development. Yes, everyone's wonderful. But I don't know. I am still
he's a lefty too, right? So
he is, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like you want some left-handed guys in your bullpen. Would you guys?
Oh no, absolutely. But I don't know what the numbers are, left versus rights in that bullpen, but he might be the odd lefty out.
According to some people, being left-handed is evil, so maybe that's why he got sent down.
I'm not saying it.
That's why Dan's evil. But the Toronto Blue Jays have now moved up to second into the AL East, only 5.5 games behind the Yankees, and they have jumped above the Rays. So if they can continue this winning streak when they go against the Phillies starting tonight, and remember, the MLB is in the Streakers app, and if you're not in the Streakers app, never mind, Dan is wrong. You are wrong. You were incorrect. So make sure you download the Streakers app right meow. Yes, I am a giant cat. I do have my duck friend, which, by the way, he will be coming into the app very, very soon. Yes, I am. I'm the duck. Hello.
Have I a different voice?
He has all kinds of voices.
Oh, multi-split personality disorder.
No. He's just a cool dude that can do voices. But let's get into the Jays Phillies game 1. Who takes game 1 in the series between the Jays and Phillies? Chazzy, I want to start with a voice of reason before I go to Dan, thinking the Jays are going to go on a 78-game winning streak to close the year out. Chazzy, who do you think is going to win this game?
You're going against Christopher Sanchez. I know they're on a 5-game heater, but unfortunately, it's going to end in game 1. I take the Phillies.
Lane?
I think the Blue Jays are going to be actually picking up game 1. I want to give some credit to the 2 guys who have really stepped it up. We've been talking about wanting this offense to step up, right? Like how much have we harped on this offense? We need offense from these guys, but I got to give these credit to these two rookies here in Addison Barger and Ernie Clement. Addison Barger right now on a 3-game home run streak. I don't know what happened. He's turned out he's like the next home run king. Barry Bonds, watch out. And then again, and Ernie Clement. I'm joking, but it's impressive. Like 3 games, that's hard to get 3 home runs in a row, 3 games in a row.
Oh yeah, it is.
Ernie Clement, I got to give him some credit too. Like he's on a 6-hit game streak with 13 hits over his last 6 games, and not only that, he made a game-saving play there on that Saturday, robbing Taylor Soderstrom there and making him throw his helmet into his own dugout there. So I really feel like these two rookies are going to help the Jays propel as long as they keep batting. Schneider's actually got them. I'll give Schneider some credit for once in 4 years. He's actually put these guys in a good spot in the lineup where they can actually produce some damage. He's finally put these guys where they need to be. I actually like what they're doing right now. I'm actually excited to watch the Jays game tomorrow. I'm actually excited.
Hey, you know what? Just be happy the Jays aren't the Rockies, who are the first team in modern MLB history to lose 50 games before winning 10.
That's insane.
Let's get into some of our custom props here. And Mr. Chazinator 5.36. Will the Phillies get 5 hits in the first 3 innings? The Blue Jays of late have either been very, very good at the start or they have been absolutely hopeless. So will the Phillies be able to take advantage of maybe a Blue Jay team that doesn't come to the ballpark after they ate their Wheaties?
I'm going out on a limb and I'm going to say yes. It's going to be a long day for the starter.
Wow.
Chazzy is not confident in the Blue Jays winning 6 of
No, I just find this Phillies lineup. It's got some power.
Oh yeah.
So Dan seems to think the Jays are the greatest team to ever touch a diamond. The Field of Dreams was based on the 25 Toronto Blue Jays.
That's right.
So Dan, will the Jays get at least 7 hits in this game?
Yeah, dude. So
yeah, dude.
I forget now which player it was. Maybe it was Varso, but someone tried the gangster bat. What do they call that?
Torpedo bat.
Clement, yeah. Clement tried torpedo bat.
About.
He's been hitting really well lately, so maybe more Jays will try torpedo bats. Guerrero's got to prove he's worth $500 million. I think he'll get going. And I think Bolsett still wants a contract, so he's going to have to start hitting too. So, yeah, we'll see what happens.
So, Lane, I have given you a prop that is very contradicting to Chazzy's prop. Will the starting pitcher for the Jays be able to go at least 6 full innings? Chazzy clearly thinks not if he's going to give up 5 hits in the first 3. But, Lane, how are you feeling?
I got to be honest, I might agree with that. I think they're going to have to go into their bullpen. And luckily enough, they didn't have to go into their bullpen much with the Oakland Athletics. So hopefully, if he does, I don't think Bowden Francis is going to go 6 innings. He just doesn't. I don't feel the confidence from a guy like that. He's had a bit of a rocky start. Yes, he has had some almost no hitters last year. He had 2 very close no hitters, but this year's been a bit more rocky. So I do think they're going to have to dip into that bullpen a little bit early here in this series. But luckily enough, they got some really good starts on the weekend. They got some really quality starts from their guys all weekend long against the Athletics. So I think they're going to be okay being able to go in their bullpen, guy pulling up like a guy like Rodriguez to go 3 or 4 innings here to help to get them through the win here.
Well, I remember too, if you disagree with any of our picks, make sure you download the Streakers app, send us a rivalry. If you think that Chazzy and I are way too negative about the Blue Jays, send us a rivalry. If you think that Dan and Lane are too happy about the Blue Jays winning 5 games in a row, send them a rivalry. Do whatever makes you happy.
Oh, send everyone a rivalry. See who's who.
I just came up with the island mindset before we got there. Do whatever makes you happy in life. But let's move on to the NBA Finals. And this is the time where Dan takes a nap and Lane and Chazzy really dig into what's going on here. So who are you guys? What is the key matchup in this NBA Finals? Like Pascal Siakam did just win the conference finals MVP. Is he a guy that you could see stepping up?
No, I think it's what it is. I think it's the SGA versus Halliburton show, right? I don't know how Tyrese Halliburton didn't get. I got to be honest. I got to agree with him. I don't know how he didn't get the the playoff award winner. He's been one of their best players. I felt like in this whole playoffs, if you can't shut down Halliburton, you're having a tough night there. He didn't have as many points to stack him in that last game there, but he's been such a deadly threat with the ball. He's been shooting well in the threes. He's been producing so many. Actually got a lot of rebounds in the game-clinching game there. I just feel like it's going to be a mention of which superstar really shows up here. I think SGA is going to keep doing what he's doing, getting 30 points a night. I think Halliburton's going to be doing what he does with assisting the ball, kind of throwing it around the rock, getting other guys like Siakam their points. Should be a real interesting series because both teams look like they can take it. And this is a cool note for people who are against
I
the
love
NBA.
notes.
I actually seen this, and I can't believe this is the first time, the first NBA Finals that both teams can't take advantage of the luxury tax system since it was introduced. So actually, both teams are actually under an actual NBA salary cap.
Wow, that's
First time
interesting.
in NBA history.
Huh.
That's a surprise.
Yeah. What do you think, Chazzy?
What was your thoughts on Halliburton's reaction when?
Actually, I want to quickly get into that. I want to talk about the reaction there. I thought that's just a terrible class act of a teammate. Instead of being moping that you didn't win your MVP award, that realistically, who cares about winning an MVP award in the conference finals? I think that's a whole other thing. That's just completely idiotic and stupid. But your teammate just won something. Be happy for your teammate. Can you imagine if, let's say Connor McDavid scored 3 goals, but Leon Draisaitl scored 2 goals and an assist, and they gave Leon Draisaitl first star of the game instead of McDavid, and McDavid was just seen on the ice like, I'm really upset. It should have been me. It should have been me. Dude.
But Lane, what is your comment? Because that was my reaction when I first saw it. Then I went to my daughter's school, dropped her off, and the guy at the door there, we always talk about, he loves his basketball. And he says, oh, no, Tyrese is the most unselfish player on the court. Nothing to read into there. So what is your thought sort of on that reaction?
I don't know. Maybe he was just kidding. I don't know. I was a little concerned with how he responded, but I definitely understand, looking at his stat line through these series. Like I said, I really do feel like he has been more the key player. He's had almost double digits assists in every game. He's been getting over 20 points mostly of the series. I don't know how he wasn't, so maybe he felt a little bit like, come on. But I also agree with Jacob too. This isn't what you're trying to win, right? You're trying to win the NBA. If there's one thing you want to be upset about, it's not winning the NBA Finals. Maybe not the secondary trophy winner. This is not a trophy that I would be that upset to lose because it's not your end goal here. So you can kind of see where he's being a little selfish, and I do agree with Jacob on that point. But I could see why he's a little surprised because I got to be honest, I was surprised he didn't win it either. But it's kind of a little bit of both there.
I get that he was surprised that he didn't win. I just think he needs to be happier for his teammate. And again, why do you care? Connor McDavid didn't give 2 rats, whatever, that he won the Conn Smythe when they lost in Game 7. Why do you care about a conference final MVP? And NBA, why do you even have a conference final MVP?
I don't know.
Seriously, talk about the award for the most pointless award goes to you for the conference final MVP, even though there's a whole other round that you want to win. No one cares about winning a conference finals in this level.
It's true.
It's kind of like when I'm seeing memes that the Leafs should put up a banner saying we took Florida to Game 7 when no one else could get by Game 5. Yay! We won the conference finals, and if we lose the NBA playoffs, we don't care because I won conference final MVP. Yay! I don't know. I just thought it was stupid.
So tailing on what you're mentioning there about the salary cap there, Lane, I believe it's this year. Doesn't Oklahoma City have 4 first-round draft picks with this team already?
Yeah, they've done a really good job with. This has been a really good.
They said they have the new art of tanking so many years, and now look at all the benefit of all their hard work.
I gotta agree. They've done a really good job of really building up this roster, right? They kind of were really bad there for a while when they lost a lot of their players, but they've done a really good job there of kind of being able to build up the guys they gotten. And they've got obviously one of the most talented players on their roster in SGA, who's just taken his game to the next level here. And I really feel like this is going to be an interesting finals. I know the playoffs hasn't really been that exciting. Viewership been down, but I'm actually really excited to see how these games go. And then Game 1 will be on June 5th. I think they actually did a better job with not delaying their finals like the NHL. I got to give the NBA some credit here, getting the NBA finals faster underway where the fans are still interested instead of waiting like 7 or 8 days to be like, well, Game 1's now where
crazy.
you're looking at the NHL where a lot of people, I feel like the interest in the viewership is going to actually go drastically down. I could see the NBA numbers being way higher than the NHL's just based on it's happening a lot faster and you're not having to wait that 7 or 8, that extra week.
I don't see the NHL numbers being down because you have a Canadian team in the finals.
True.
With Edmonton in the finals, all Canada's going to
But still, a couple extra day momentum right now. We could have been on Game 2 by Game 1.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't like how we waited like an eternity to get the playoffs going, but I don't see it affecting the numbers.
Mine did sell them more papers for an extra couple days.
Exactly. But getting back into the NHL, then I think we had a full show on this for about an hour and 40 minutes. So make sure you follow that. And by the way, if you only like to listen to us on Spotify, I will be putting that show on Spotify later this week. So you'll be able to check out the whole show.
Great show.
But Brad Treliving in his presser talked about DNA. I got loyalty and royalty inside my DNA. Maybe he's just a really big Kendrick Lamar fan. I'm not sure. Dan, don't start talking about Kendrick Lamar's shoes.
No.
The Maple Leafs talk about needing a DNA change. I don't know if this means Morgan Riley being on the way out. I don't know if it's just about Marner and Tavares being.
Is your captain on the move?
Is your captain on the move? Mind you, I think if all these no move clauses, they're not. But
yeah, I would love to see Captain Matthews moved, but how?
But do you think he would lift it for a move?
No.
Somewhere that he wants?
No. The only way you would have lifted if Arizona was still a team, and they're not. So you have Matthews, you have Nylander, you have Riley, you have your defense under contract. However, friend of the program, Alexander Budde, talked about how maybe the Leafs need to pull a Raptors, or as I talked about an Argos, and just make a surprising move.
Yeah, he had a really good point. So definitely tune in on our show.
So talking about that, it kind of when we talked about a bit about Marnie Necas, how I said maybe the Leafs go for him. The more I think about that over the last hour since I said that, I agree with you boys that bringing in Necas really doesn't fix the problem. You're bringing in another small forward of no physical side. I think Sam Bennett's a pipe dream. I don't see it happening, but I did get a text from a viewer before we recorded, and I wanted to read his text to you guys live on the air about a big trade that he thinks could happen for Toronto.
Let's hear it.
There are rumors that Quinn Hughes no longer wants to stay in Vancouver.
Because he wants to play with his brothers.
Screw his brothers. Brotherly love. Look, Dan and I do a podcast together, and we can't even be in the same room. So, Nylander, Riley, and Joseph Woll for Quinn Hughes.
That's a terrible trade.
That's not happening.
I don't see it happening. However, we talk about making a splash that no one sees coming. So he wants to ask, good deal or pipe dream?
Pipe dream.
If you're getting Quinn Hughes, I'm being honest, you're trading Austin Matthews. Only way it's happening. You know,
I disagree with you. I think William Nylander and could maybe get Elias Pettersson to actually play.
No, I feel like you're Quinn Hughes. You're talking about a guy who like gets 108 points as a defenseman. Like this is not he's getting trading for. If you're trading him, you're gonna have to trade your. He's like a number one defenseman. He might be the second best defenseman in all the NHL. You're gonna have to trade someone of an Austin Matthews caliber, even to get your foot in the door. It's like almost like acquiring a Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. You're not.
You cannot compare Quinn Hughes to Connor McDavid.
He's that good. No,
he is very, very, very good. He's not Cale Makar.
He's pretty close.
I think he is. I'm with Lane on this one.
He's pretty close.
I'm with Lane. I think he's better than Cale Makar.
I didn't say he's better. I said he's close.
I think he's better.
If you want to, all I'm just saying, you got to trade. Nylander's not a.
Turn it around.
No, I honestly think he's better. He's younger. Cale Makar sucked in the playoffs. And what I love about Quinn Hughes was that. What?
I don't agree that he's better. I think they're.
No, but he is. What I love about him is when he was injured, he skipped on the phone Nasons and stayed to be the captain of his NHL team. And for a young kid to do the right thing like that, you gotta give him mad respect, Will. And we talk about the culture. We talk about the culture change the Maple Leafs need. maybe that's what they need. They need someone like that as a captain versus Captain Underpants went off to be went off to lose to America, and then he didn't do anything playoffs because he was injured supposedly.
You know what's crazy? Quinn Hughes almost got more points than Austin Matthews did playing in almost the same amount of games.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
it's on a worse team.
76 points, 60 assists in only 67 games. Like, I just think like if you're gonna get a guy like that, you're gonna have to acquire. You're gonna have to put a little bit more in the jar. Maybe you can now. Maybe you could trade like Matthew Nyes, William Nylander, and Easton Cowan to get Quinn Hughes. Maybe you could do
Oh, that's
something
way
like
too
that.
much. You're not trading that many pieces. I'm just doing an Austin Matthews 1v1
It's not happening.
trade. And I was lucky enough to see Quinn Hughes live in person, and he's even better in person. I think he's the next big deal.
Boys,
He's a
you're-
great defenseman.
Number one, I think Vancouver would rather have William Nylander than Austin Matthews. I'm putting that out there right now.
Oh, for sure they would.
I'm
I want to give him up.
Guy. I want William Nylander more now than Austin Matthews. William Nylander stays healthy and he's better in the playoffs.
Mhm.
Number two, you already know William Nylander and Elias Pettersson have chemistry. It's funny we're having this much conversation on a trade that will never happen. But Elias Pettersson and William Nylander already have chemistry, which we've seen together, playing together in Four Nations and playing together at the World Hockey Championship. But I think the biggest thing for me is I think a trade like this for Toronto might be the shakeup that they need in the quote-unquote DNA. Maybe you need to make a move that everyone's like,
It's just what I said on the podcast. My problem is it's not like you can't make the trade. It's just what do you trade? Because you know the thing is with Shanahan, he's really left us in a really bad spot, and I'm really scared because I don't want. I said it 100 times. I'm not backtracking. I don't want Mitch Marner on this team. I really don't want John Tavares, but I don't see how this team gets better. Even if you bring in 4 free agents, you're definitely going to regress in some areas from your points when you're not bringing in 2 guys that got with a combined 182 points in whatever combined seasons. I don't want them back. I don't think they're the answer because we've seen it for 9 years and we know it doesn't work. But at the same time, we are just we're in a window that's closing faster than you can say the word window, and it's the Leafs are in a really awkward spot right now. We could go another hour, which you can listen to our Spotify. I don't want to go on too long about it, but it's a really scary time for Leaf fans because you don't know what's happening. You can't really make trades because everyone's under no trade clauses. Everyone could just be like, yeah, no thanks, go get a cheeseburger at McDonald's. No, thank you.
Aren't you thin on the draft for the next 4 years too?
Yeah, you've got no draft pick. You got no draft picks. 90% of your roster has full no trade moves where they can just be like, yeah, well, I don't care. You've got no prospects. Chazzy, we've got no prospects. We've got no draft picks, and everyone on our roster
have a
has
prospect. And
one guy.
Yeah, and I think you are considering moving Easton Cowan to bring in the right piece. Now, funny enough, when he texted me that trade, I texted him a different one, right?
It's yours.
We're always talking different trades. I also sent him a very weird video about trolling on Facebook Marketplace. Wow. But I said,
who is this guy?
And I said here, Riley, Woll, and Cowan, and I would consider it. Instead of Nylander, put in Easton Cowan.
Why are you up so much?
Because you guys have just told me that Quinn Hughes is as good as Connor McDavid. That's what you guys have told me less than 2 minutes ago. If Edmonton was to trade Connor McDavid, you would probably have to trade the entire Toronto Maple Leaf roster.
Yeah.
So to get a guy like Quinn Hughes, arguably one of the best, I'll be honest, I
think he's the second best defenseman in the NHL. I think he is. Not number 1. I think he's number 2.
I think he's 3. I think Jacob Slavin's better. And I could argue
Depends what you're looking for.
I could argue game to game that there are some games that Evan Bouchard I would also put in that conversation. But Quinn Hughes is one of those defensemen that can change a game by himself. We've seen it multiple times. I don't know. When you're saying you wouldn't give up that much to get him, if you want to bring in a generational player, you are going to have to trade a generational player.
That's what I was
get that.
saying.
It's
That's
like
what I was saying.
If anything,
Well, not 3 of them.
I'm actually not
sir, not
disagreeing
3
about moving
players.
Joseph Woe to Vancouver, but I'm getting Thatcher Demko.
Yeah, that'll be a good trade.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes,
Thatcher
yes,
Demko.
yes.
No, he's no.
Yes.
You gotta remember his back injury. He's not gonna. You forget he's
Joseph
got.
Woe hasn't stayed healthy for a full season either.
And you got Storhoffs as a backup.
I wouldn't touch Thatcher Demko with a 10-foot pole.
Again, if you're trying to make a change, you have to take a risk.
Exactly.
Thatcher Demko was a risk, but if he pays off, oh, buddy, you got a Vezina caliber goalie if it pays off.
Oh, yeah.
If it doesn't pay off, you're screwed. It was like the Kawhi Leonard trade. If that Raptor team did not win a championship, that would have went down as one of the worst trades in Toronto sports history.
Mm-hmm.
But they won.
Exactly.
If you trade Joseph Woe for Thatcher Demko, it could go down as one of the worst trades in Leaf history.
23 games,
or it could be a great trade.
Could be. Yeah.
It's one of those things.
I like that trade. Probably Vancouver would take it, but I like it.
I think Vancouver would take it. You have Lankinen, and they already have Shelovs, who they want to develop more in the minors. Lankinen and Woe would be a pretty good tandem for Vancouver, right?
Yeah, I guess it would be.
So I think we're going to see, and we talked about this a lot more in our Leaf WTF show, basically, I'll call it. And we'll probably do another one at some point. Chazzy still has to go get more Oberregenbacher popcorn. But before we sign off for the night, Dan usually has an island mindset, but apparently Chazzy has an island mindset, and I'm very confused.
I'm confused.
Well, okay, I guess I'll put 2 of them then. Chazzy sent an interesting video in our group chat, just like the Chuck Blovers on Team USA. And it was a very good video. It was talking something I talked about before on the show, but I thought it was so important to talk about again. It's about having a positive attitude and how having I'll trim it down. The video was longer. It's about how a positive attitude can really change your mindset and how important that is, and to actually change your brain and change the way how it thinks and be positive will actually bring out positive outcomes and positive results in your life. And Chazzy said he thinks a mindset's so important, and I totally agree with him. That's why we came up with the idea of the island mindset, right? And
I honestly thought when you just put Chazzy positive mindset, I thought
I get it. I get it.
That Chazzy is the most positive man of life. But Dan and Chazzy, I do agree with you both that having a positive mind and a positive attitude can make a really big difference in your life. Now, you can't be positive 24 hours a day, but if you can try to be a positive person, you will see positive change.
And then the second thing I was just going to say, this is what I was going to say instead. We mentioned it before in the show, but very, very sad to the Stiegel family. It was so sad that his son Chase passed away at 20. He's very young age. And when you see something like that, this reminds you that you have to be thankful, as Pitbull says, not the dog, the singer. But you gotta be thankful for every day 6 feet above ground. And it's about being positive too, right? Like, you never know, regardless how old you are, how young you are, how active you are, how not active you are, you never know when your last day is going to be. So you gotta enjoy every minute of it and do whatever you can every moment.
I couldn't have said it better myself on either positive mindsets. But it is time that we sign off. So thank you very much for watching the Streakers Island podcast, powered by Streakers Gaming. Looking for more Streakers Island content? Of course you are. We're pretty fun. Download the Streakers Gaming app so you can play along in our sports booth. Plus, follow us on all the social medias. And make sure you give us a like, subscribe, and whatever you do on TikTok. I don't
follow.
I guess you follow on TikTok. So stalk Dan. Like, literally find out where he gets his hash browns from, because he loves hash browns.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm Jacob Moore, the Self-Proclaimed Sports Analyst. We have the most dashing man of all, Lane Dashing Dashco. We have Mr. More for your money.
Woo!
There you go.
And the man who puts the capital E in CEO. Thank you very much for watching, and we will be live on Wednesday, my dudes. to preview Game 1 of the NHL Stanley Cup.
Exciting.
Peace out.
Bye-bye.
Podcast!